listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy. I'm a relationship coach, and I help people who are engaging in anything they think counts as infidelity to deal with their feelings, clarify what they want, and make decisions about what they're going to do. No shame, no blame, no judgments. A lot of the so-called advice for people who are engaging in infidelity is little more than thinly veiled judgment, but that is not what I provide. I provide guidance and support that respects the fullness of your humanity and the complexity of your situation. If you're ready to begin the process of resolving your infidelity situation in a way that's truly right for you, I can help you do it. Just schedule an introductory coaching session with me. Go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I can't wait to meet you. Today, we're going to talk about guilt and responsibility. Sometimes people come to me and say, I actually don't feel guilty about cheating, as if they are confessing something bad. And sometimes they go on to say, does that mean there's something wrong with me? Does that mean I'm a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath? My answer to all of those questions is no, and I'll tell you why momentarily. If you don't feel guilty about cheating, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It doesn't mean you're a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath. I know there are people out there who would disagree with me on these points, and that's fine. We're all allowed to have our perspectives. More importantly, if thinking of yourself as a narcissist or a sociopath or a psychopath for not feeling guilty about cheating, if believing that there's something wrong with you for not feeling guilty about cheating helps you in some identifiable way, then by all means, keep thinking about yourself like that. But usually thinking this way is not helpful. And now I will tell you why I don't think not feeling guilty about cheating means there's anything wrong with you. That's a bunch of weird negatives in there. I don't know if that's grammatically proper, but the point is I'm going to explain why not feeling guilty about cheating is not an indication that you're a psychopath or a narcissist or anything like that. I hope that makes sense. Here's the thing. Cheating, or the behaviors that we think count as cheating, is a neutral behavior until we give it meaning. Now, the problem is, as I've talked about on other episodes, the language that we use to talk about infidelity is really loaded. Cheating is a word that is laden with negative connotations. I think infidelity is a little less loaded than some of the other words we use, but it isn't exactly neutral. So the problem is that as soon as we start talking about cheating or infidelity or adultery or affairs or whatever, we begin to imply that we are, by definition, talking about bad things, bad behaviors. And as I've said in other episodes, I think we need a whole new vocabulary to talk about this kind of stuff. But since we don't yet, I continue to use words like cheating and infidelity, an affair or affairs, for the sake of not being too confusing. However, let's be really clear about something. The behaviors that we think of as cheating or as infidelity or as adultery or as an affair are not inherently bad behaviors that deserve negative labels or labels that have negative connotations. They aren't even inherently meaningful behaviors. All of our actions are neutral until we give them meaning. Or put differently, our actions are meaningless until we assign meaning to them. And of course, one of the things that humans in groups do is exactly that. We collectively assign meaning to human actions all the time. And this isn't a good or a bad thing. And moreover, we wouldn't be able to function as a society if we didn't do this. Shared understandings of what means what make the world go round. Shared understandings of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable also make the world go round. Having understandings with other people about how we're going to live is part of what keeps society functioning to the extent that it does. And in order to have shared understandings about how we're going to live and shared agreements about what's okay and not okay, we tend to rely on shared understandings of what human actions mean. So to reiterate, the point here is not that assigning meaning to our actions is a bad thing in and of itself, or that we shouldn't do it. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I am suggesting is that we want to recognize that the meanings we have given to certain human behaviors, or to all human behaviors actually, are social in origin. They're the product of human interactions and negotiations. That's not to say that human-made meanings aren't powerful. They certainly are. But they aren't non-negotiable. And they certainly aren't these absolute, unchangeable things that have been handed down by any particular deity or superhuman source. We want to be aware that we have the power to examine the meanings humans have assigned to certain behaviors and the consequences of buying into these meanings. And with that, we also have the opportunity to recognize that we always have the option of changing what we think particular behaviors mean, or what we think anything means for that matter. What we as individuals think matters a lot, even if what other people think may matter too, right? And moreover, when we as individuals take responsibility for our own thinking and potentially decide to change our own thinking, we're able to contribute to changes in how people collectively see things or think about things. Now, with all of that in mind, we could get deep into the history of why the behaviors we think count as infidelity have come to be considered bad or problematic. And we could get deep into social construction theory and the sociology of knowledge and of public opinion. But instead of doing that, let's just lay out a few brief points. Societies have, at various points in time, decided that behaviors that we think of as cheating are problematic, and those ideas came about within particular socio-historical contexts for reasons that made sense to certain people at that time. And over time, these ideas have been reinforced in various ways. So this is a very off-the-cuff example. The idea that infidelity is bad and that marriage or commitment is good may have originated in religions in part. It may have some origins in major world religions. But over time, the self-help industrial complex and the therapeutic industrial complex and the romantic relationship industrial complex have reinforced this notion that, monogamy is good, committed relationships are good, marriage is really good, and cheating is very, very bad. With the idea that cheating is problematic has come the idea that there's something wrong with you if you don't think that cheating is problematic. These kinds of ideas are out there in the social world we inhabit. You've probably been exposed to these kinds of ideas in hundreds of subtle and not so subtle variations. But just because these ideas are out there, and even though a lot of people may agree with these ideas, doesn't mean they are true in any absolute sense. Just because a lot of people, even people with professional credentials, believe that cheating is bad and that there's something wrong with you if you don't believe that too, doesn't make that true with a capital T. More to the point, even if someone with a particular degree and a particular job title tells you that you are in fact a narcissist because you're cheating and you don't think that what you're doing is bad, that's just one perspective. That perspective may be totally valid within that professional's domain of their professional knowledge, and it might well have some value somehow, some way, somewhere. It might even have some value for you, but that doesn't mean that it's an absolute truth that you have to agree with. Now, it's also important to note that in some societies, cheating has not been and is not, to this day, considered this terrible, awful thing. And sometimes in places, people have generally believed and still generally believe that even if committed relationships are important, cheating isn't that big of a deal as long as you perhaps keep it quiet and don't do anything too disruptive, right? Now, I'm not saying that means that anything goes necessarily, but I am pointing out that there are many different perspectives out there on what cheating can mean. I'm not going to get into a bunch of specific examples because the point I really want to underscore is that even if some people think that cheating is really, really bad, which some people certainly do, it's not a universally shared belief that cheating is really, really bad. Not only is it not a universal truth, it's not even universally believed to be a truth, right? Now, knowing all of this may not be of immediate help to you if you are a member of a society or a community in which cheating is considered pretty bad, or at least not very good. We all have to contend with the norms that surround us, at least to some extent. But I point out that there are different perspectives on infidelity that exist in the world today and in the past to further illustrate that you not feeling guilty about cheating does not have to be considered an indication that there is anything wrong with you or that you have a diagnosable psychiatric disorder. Cheating and not feeling guilty about it is an indication that you have different thoughts about cheating than some people do. That may be a verifiable fact, and that may be about it. On top of that, there may be value or utility in not feeling guilty about whatever you're doing in the infidelity realm. In other words, not feeling guilty about cheating may actually help you deal with your infidelity situation more effectively. There's a very prevalent idea out there that feeling guilty about cheating will make you stop doing it. But this notion is problematic in two ways, or at least two ways, right? One is the feeling of guilt does not tend to enable us to make positive change. For a lot of people, feeling guilty inspires hiding and avoidance and resistance to making change. And hiding from or avoiding dealing with our infidelity situation or any specific aspect of it may not actually help you in any discernible way, right? And of course, the second problem is that you may not want to stop cheating. You might want to continue what you're doing. And the point may be that you want to find a way to keep doing that meshes with your other priorities in life, right? There's the general assumption that resolving an infidelity situation means that you stop cheating. Or if you're in a committed relationship, you go back to that person and you stop whatever you're doing on the side. Or if you're not in a committed relationship, but you're involved with someone who is, you stop doing that because you're contributing to somebody else's cheating. Whatever. You don't have to do that. That doesn't have to be the way you choose to resolve your situation. Anyway, since we as a society, or in some societies anyway, have decided that cheating is bad, and if you're cheating, you'd better feel bad about doing it. And if you don't feel bad about doing it, then you're really bad. And since we disseminate those messages in all kinds of ways, a lot of people get stuck under different layers of guilt or multiple layers of guilt. And this is part of what makes it so hard for them to actually deal with their infidelity situations. And when we don't recognize that guilt is, in and of itself, part of the problem, that adds to our challenges. So if you're not feeling guilty about cheating, consider that not only is there nothing wrong with you, consider that you're also relieving yourself of a whole lot of unnecessary suffering. However, not feeling guilty about your infidelity situation may not, in and of itself, be the solution to all of your problems, or it may not relieve you of having any problems. Even if you don't feel guilty about cheating, you might not want to keep on doing what you're doing indefinitely. There may be aspects of your infidelity situation that you do not like, even if you don't feel the emotion of guilt. For instance, some people really hate lying and being deceptive. Some people don't like having to remember their lies and keep their stories straight. Some people don't like being emotionally invested in multiple relationships, etc., etc., etc. There are many things you might dislike about your infidelity situation, even if you don't feel guilty about it. And that's the whole point. An absence of guilt does not necessarily mean you're content with what you've got going on. So try this little exercise out. If you're engaging in something you think counts as infidelity and you don't feel guilty about what you're doing, ask yourself if you feel good about what you're doing. If you feel good about it, great. Or maybe the bar is feeling fine about it. If you feel fine about it, great. That's one thing. Let me make it clear that if you're okay with what you're doing, that is your right and your business, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. However, if you don't feel guilty, but you also don't feel good about what you're doing, or as good as you'd like to feel, I want you to ask yourself why you don't feel guilty. Posing this question is a little tricky because I realize that by asking you to ask yourself this, I might sound like I'm implying that you should feel guilty. And that's not my intention. I'm not saying you should feel guilty at all. My intention is to help you dig into your own thoughts about your situation. So stay with me here. Sometimes when people tell me they don't feel guilty about cheating, they have these really elaborate, well thought out explanations as to why they don't feel guilty about cheating. And what those explanations often include are justifications for their behavior or defenses of their behavior. And justifying your behavior is different from saying simply, I'm choosing to do what I'm doing for reasons that I like, and that's all there is to it, right? A story that I hear over and over again goes something like this. Well, I'm married, and my spouse did this really bad thing at one point in our relationship, and they never made amends for it, and our relationship kind of went to shit as a result, and I've been unhappy in the marriage because of them, so I feel like it's only fair for me to do what I want outside of the marriage. Or sometimes people say that they explicitly feel justified, explicitly say that they're justified for doing whatever they're doing. Sometimes people say things like, well, my spouse didn't give me what I needed in the relationship, so I'm justified in getting my needs met elsewhere. And I think this kind of explanation for why someone is cheating and why they have decided to not feel guilty about it is so interesting. Because on the one hand, this could work out for someone just fine. If you decide, okay, I feel justified in doing this thing for these reasons, so I'm going to do it and I'm not going to feel guilty about it, you might not have a problem on your hands. If you feel okay about it, that might be the end of the story. And it is for some people. But when we start justifying anything or defending anything, whether it's engaging in infidelity or not feeling guilty about engaging in infidelity or doing anything else for that matter, there may be something funny going on somewhere in there. There's a difference between feeling truly okay about what you're doing to the point that you don't need to justify it, even if someone else might potentially take issue with your actions, and finding ways to justify something you don't feel completely okay about. And this distinction may really matter for you in practice because it may have a big impact on how you feel about yourself and how you feel about your life. Justifying whatever it is we're doing may be a great short-term strategy for, getting by or having our cake and eating it too, or juggling multiple balls in the air or whatever. And that's fine. But in the long run, it may not get us what we want the most or the most of what we want. So if you're justifying your cheating or whatever your infidelity behavior is because of what you consider to be your partner's misdeeds, you get to ask yourself if you like that. And if you do, that's fine. But what I see is that a lot of people who say they don't feel guilty about cheating because they have this list of things that their partner did that allows them to justify their cheating aren't really all that happy with their infidelity situations. They may like some aspects of them quite a lot, but they don't like other aspects. They don't like the whole package all that much. Perhaps most importantly, people who justify their cheating by citing their spouse's bad behavior aren't really all that happy in their marriages or within their committed relationships. And so cheating and having that to distract from the whatever's going on in the marriage and not feeling guilty about doing that might be a win on some level. It might be a win in some respects. At least you get to have some pleasure and fun on the side, right? That can be a really nice thing, but the overall situation might not be much of a win at all. Is staying in a marriage with someone you feel justified in cheating on because they did all of these things that you don't like a success? Forget about the cheating part for a second. Ask yourself what you get out of staying with someone you're holding a bunch of grudges against, right? Now, let me rush to point out that people tend to have very human reasons for staying with partners they feel ambivalent about, or feel wronged by, or are holding grudges against, or are otherwise dissatisfied with, and then for justifying cheating on them, and for avoiding thinking about what they might really want their romantic life to look like and how they might want to resolve their whole complex of romantic dilemmas, right? But no matter how human your reasons are for doing whatever it is you're doing, eventually the important question becomes, do you want to keep doing what you're doing or not? At some point, the question stops being, do you feel guilty about what you're doing or not? Or how can you justify what you're doing? And the question becomes, how do you want to live? Not what can you get away with or what can you justify? What can you do without feeling guilty about it? But what can you feel great about? So to that effect, I want to suggest that beyond a certain point, we may want to shift from thinking about guilt or the presence or absence of guilt to thinking about responsibility or responsibility. That's the word response hyphen and the word ability or the ability to respond. Now, there is a time and place for dealing with guilt, to be sure. I'm not saying to just ignore guilt if you're feeling guilty. No way. Dealing with guilt in an intentional way is really important, and I can teach you how to do that and teach you how to get good at doing that. But in addition to dealing with our guilt, if we're experiencing it, we want to think about responsibility. And if we aren't feeling guilt, we also want to think about responsibility. And to illustrate what I'm talking about here, I'm going to give you a little update on one of my ongoing life situations. So back in episode 54, which is called Embracing Your Contradictions and came out in like 2021, I talked about how I, for a while, was in the habit of taking my beloved old dog outside to go to the bathroom in this area on the side of my building and not picking up his poop when he pooped out there, which was like pretty much every weekday for a number of months. And by a number of months, I do not mean 2 months or 3 months. I've lost track of the exact timeline, but this went on for a while. And this area to the side of my building was not my private property. It was and is essentially common area, but not common area that anyone really used or uses. It's a space with dirt and some plant life. And since no one ever really goes out there, and since it was so convenient for me to take my dog out there to relieve himself, and also since the plants and the dirt kind of like, digested or composted the dog doo-doo, I was able to justify my behavior to myself. And this is really saying something because in general, I really want to pick up after my dog. I am a big believer in picking up dog poop. In general, there are exceptions to this, but in general, I pick up dog poop even if no one is watching. I pick up dog poop even if it's in places that no one is likely to ever walk or go. And I am happy to make the effort to do so. And it's also really important to me to be a respectful neighbor and not do things that are what I consider to be disrespectful of shared spaces or shared resources. So in other words, letting my dog poop in this area day after day for months on end and not picking it up was unusual behavior for me. And I didn't feel good about this unusual behavior. But it was just so damn convenient for me to take my dog out there and let him go to the bathroom and not pick up his poop when I was in a hurry in the morning, when I was in between coaching calls and trying to get a bunch of things done in a short amount of time. It was just so easy to take him out there and accomplish this important task. Now, I could have picked up his poop and taken it to a trash can, of course, but that would have defeated the whole point. It would have made the whole thing a lot less convenient and therefore pointless. So I kept on doing this thing that I felt bad about doing because the benefit I got far outweighed the drawback of feeling guilty about doing something that I didn't feel great about doing. And I will tell you, the guilt was significant. It was really significant. I had the talk with myself every day. I'm not really going to do this again, am I? Oh, yeah, well, maybe just one more time, right? And even though the guilt was really uncomfortable at times, it did not motivate me to make positive change. Then circumstances changed. My old dog died last summer, so that effectively put a stop to me not picking up his poop in the location I have mentioned. After his death, I made a half-hearted attempt to pick up what poop I could in that area, but nature had already absorbed and reintegrated a lot of it. And then it rained more this winter than it has in California for a very long time. And that really helped wipe the slate clean, so to speak. So the outside area was completely refreshed and renewed, and there's even more plant life, and I feel much better about things. Then, in the middle of all of this rain, the beginning of this year, I got a new puppy. And I take him down to that same outside area sometimes to do his doggy bathroom business. But this time around, I pick up his poop every single time. If it's dark outside and I just can't see what's what, I come back when it's light and I make sure I clean up after him. And here's why I'm picking up the poop this time around. Because I want to. Not because I feel bad about not doing it. Not because I think I would feel bad if I didn't do it. Not because I feel bad about not having done it in the past. It's because this time around, I am actively thinking about what's great about doing my part to keep this common area clean. It's because this time around, I want to prioritize doing what I consider to be the right thing in this situation, which happens to be picking up the dog poop. It just feels so much better on the whole to be taking responsibility for my part in this situation than to be justifying my behavior and or feeling guilty about what I'm doing, but doing it anyway. Now, it still takes more effort to pick up the poop than not pick up the poop. That may be true, but that effort made willingly isn't a big deal. Without resistance to making the effort, doing what I think is the right thing isn't all that onerous. And I no longer spend precious minutes of my life feeling guilty and not changing my behavior, right? It's no fun to spend time thinking about yourself as being bad or thinking about what you're doing as bad. And it doesn't help us change. So just to be really clear, when I say that I think I'm doing the right thing by picking up my dog's poop, I'm not saying that I'm doing the right thing in any absolute sense. I do happen to think that the world is a better place when there isn't dog doo-doo everywhere. And I do strongly prefer that dog owners pick up after their dogs. But I am also at peace with the fact that I don't get to make the rules or dictate what other people do. However, I do get to do what I consider to be the right thing. I do get to contribute to creating the conditions that I would like to see in the world. And by taking responsibility for my own behavior, I get to feel a lot better than I would by not doing that and by justifying my decision to avoid doing that. And that's what a lot of my clients find is true for them in their infidelity situations. They find that it takes effort to assume responsibility. It takes effort to assume the ability to respond. And it may mean dealing with some serious life shit, to continue the scatological talk today. And that may be no small thing. But dealing with your own shit, unpleasant as that may be, can actually be 1,000,000 times better than not dealing with it. Because for one thing, feeling able to respond, usually feels a lot better than the alternatives. Okay, here's a little recap for you. There's nothing wrong with you if you don't feel guilty about cheating. If anyone says that there is, you can generously ignore them or politely disagree with them, or you can scream at them for being wrong if you want to. But you don't have to make their opinion your truth about yourself. Feeling guilty can really get in the way of taking responsibility for what we have the power to control in any situation in life. If it doesn't get in the way, it certainly doesn't help us take responsibility. Sometimes we think we get some sort of benefit from feeling guilty, but if you look closely at how that actually works in your own life, I'm willing to bet that you'll see that guilt doesn't inspire you to do anything great. And although not feeling guilty may lighten your load, and that's a good thing, not feeling guilty about your infidelity situation may not be a solution in and of itself, or it may not be an ultimate solution. Which is why we don't want to get too focused on guilt. Yes, we want to deal with guilt if we're feeling it, but the bigger opportunity may lie in looking beyond guilt to responsibility, to taking ownership of our ability to respond. And if you want help doing this, if you would like help cultivating your capacity to be responsible within your infidelity situation, that's what I am here for. Sometimes we just don't know how to take responsibility for what we have the power to control in a certain situation, and we need someone to show us the way. And that's exactly what I can do for you. Seeing where you have the power to take responsibility for your infidelity situation and then exercising your responsibility can be a bit of a learning process, but I am here to teach you and guide you. And the reward of learning how to do this is that you get to feel like you are in control of your own life, because you actually are. And knowing this in your bones, demonstrating this to yourself is the best thing ever. So when you're ready to get to work and begin the process of dealing with your infidelity situation in a way that's truly right for you, you can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. You can also learn more about the current coaching packages I offer, as well as my current pricing through the services page of my website. I offer confidential, compassionate coaching via Zoom, which means we can work together no matter where you're located. Okay, everyone, that's it for today. Thank you all so much for listening. If you have enjoyed this episode, if you've been enjoying this podcast, if you appreciate hearing what I have to say, I would appreciate it if you would rate and review the show on iTunes. You can do this anonymously, and your ratings and reviews help other people who would benefit from hearing my perspective find this podcast. So thank you in advance for taking a moment to do this. Okay, everybody, have a great week. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.